Hello, I am Rosika Brown.
And I'm Jen Russell, so please enjoy our video reading response on whether video games are art or not.
It's a bomb diggy diggy.
In the late 19th century, artists such as Claude Monet first displayed their paintings, largely different from other notable painters at the time. The new style paintings strayed from traditional historical subjects, religious themes, and portraits, and they instead resembled a snapshot of reality captured as if by chance. These artists received harsh criticism and opposition from the conventional art community in France, even called an insult to other great painters. Today, however, we know these paintings and artists to be part of a large movement known as Impressionism that gave rise to famous artists including Claude Monet, Alfred Sisley, and Vincent van Gogh.
Fast forward and consider the many artists and musicians throughout our history whose work was at first disliked and questioned because it was different. Video games are now being questioned. So are they or are they not art? And if they are, do all or only some games classified as such? This week's reading discussed opposing viewpoints on this subject.
Firstly, film and novel critic Roger Ebert supported his previous claim that video games were not art in OK Kids, Play on My Lawn, in which Ebert openly admitted that making a claim about video games without ever having played them was unsubstantiated. But he argued his position, saying video games give up too much authorial control. Art seeks to lead you to an inevitable conclusion, not a smorgasbord of choices, as in a video game, he said. Ultimately, he agreed, gamers can have an experience that for them is art, but he went on to say that he doesn't know what gamers can learn about another human being that way, no matter how much they learn about human nature. He admitted he may be wrong, but he isn't willing to play a video game to find that out.
In the second reading debate, Art House Games vs. Ebert, Jason Rohrer, creator of video games including Passage from earlier this section, weighed in on the debate including arguments from Ebert as well as English author, film director, and visual artist Clive Baker. In the article, Rohrer suggests Ebert's opinion was made without adequate basic asking, if you don't play any games, how can you be sure that no game out there has reached the heights of Shakespeare yet? Rohrer supports that video games are in fact art. He argues Ebert's basics that require authorial control, claiming that novels and movies are collaborative. He points out that some form of audience collaboration is necessary for an art experience. A game is perhaps a half-finished work of art waiting for a co-artist, like the half canvas or like a screenplay written for a film crew, he said. So who makes a better argument in the video game as art debate? With Ebert's credibility largely diminished, we argue with Barker and Rohrer. The beauty and art of a game is not only in the visuals of game, but the player control and limitless options of the player on how a game is played.
Lastly, in Play on Meaning, Edward Bicot, who publishes works of hyperliterature, established that games can be art, but provided specific requirements and genres of games that fall under this category. Using games like Graveyard, The Marriage, and Gravitation as examples, Picot identifies four defining features of games and makes them art. The first is to use the structure of the game itself for symbolic purposes. The second is to slow the game down, eliminate time constraints, and do away with the need for players to display skill, allowing the player more freedom to concentrate on the game's artistic aspects. The third is to create a sense of separation between the player and the game's central character, so that the unfolding of a game becomes less like a personal challenge and more like the unfolding of a story. And the fourth is to choose an unusual game scenario and develop it in an unorthodox manner. These games make players stop and think, as art does, because they are different from what we would normally expect. With Edward Picot's four defining features we just listed, are these games distinct from big studio games? And do they legitimately offer something valuable in opposition to big studio games?
Many big studio games do offer time constraint, and there is little separation between the player on-screen character. It is also hard to find symbolic purposes in the actual structure of big studio games. While games like Grand Theft Auto and Call of Duty are hopefully different from your everyday life, the game scenario is far from unusual and has some basic in reality. As far as offering something valuable, my experience from video game usually only offer entertainment. While a loss of a Wii boxing game or Mario Kart to a friend might have a negative impact on my afternoon, big studio games have never before left me with lesson like I have learned from a game like Passage. But that doesn't mean that I don't think big studio games are not art.
There are many films like The Hangover which didn't teach me a significant life lesson that I still consider art. The point of such a movie is to make the audience laugh, and some video games might also have a simple message. As Jason Rohrer claimed, the art is in the player's control over the game, and the player gets from the game what they put into it. If I want to run a hooker over for fun in Grand Theft Auto, I can. And if I choose to learn something from the promotion of violence and prostitution, I also can.
And now we pose a question to you. Are games art? Are they? Are they?